All right. Hello, everybody. Let us check and see that our sound and everything is good. I think we are set to go here. Let's see. Where are we getting? Ah, there it is. Good. Live from Denver, it is Friday night. Hey, everybody. Hey, critics out there. Welcome to the show. This is Critical Conversations for the 20th of May in the year of our Lord, 2022. Yeah?
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
I think you are.
Okay, and I am joined by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
So happy to have her back.
Yay.
Yes, we are always happy when you are here. Yay!
I'm glad that I'm slowly getting over this annoying cough.
Yes, we are too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually really at the tail end of this Kansas flu thing we had. I tell you, man, I don't know if it's just because I'm older or whatever, but I have not been taken down by a sickness like that in a long ass time. Man, that was bad. Yeah, 69 AD. That's right. It's 69 AD. No, it's not. It is not 60. What is it? What is it? 50? 72 AD.
Okay.
Maybe it's 69 AD is in reference to something else, but after Dianetics.
Oh, okay.
Right, and Dianetics was 1950.
Right.
So in the year of Dianetics, this is year 72. Yeah. Just checking at some of the comments here. Yeah, these flus are taking over the world. That's right. And now we got monkeypox thing happening.
Yeah, we were just watching the news before we came on, and there's monkeypox is going around the globe a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, apparently not as fatal.
Out for that.
Yeah, not as fatal an outcome as COVID, routinely speaking. Fatigue, I guess, was the biggest thing and some stuff. But boy, that really messes with your body. It's not a fun thing to have aesthetically, that's for sure. So, yeah, good times out there, huh? Yeah. Well, anyway, this being a call-in show, we got some things to talk about as far as the topic of the show goes tonight. I definitely have some things to tell you guys about or go over with you. But this is call-in show. 984-214-4154 is the number. I think I'm finally getting that after, almost 2 years now, or year and a half or something.
2 years, yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
Finally getting that down. Yes. Hey, Diane. Yeah. Loving the comments here. Okay. Somebody asked before the show started, on that crackling sound thing, I hope it's fixed. I made a couple adjustments, and tomorrow I'm actually sending this in for replacement. So I'm hoping things are going smooth. The testing looked like the crackling was gone. Fingers crossed that it is and stays that way. Anyway, I was saying that, what was I saying before that?
We were talking about monkeypox and
the show, yeah, that we've been on this time, and
yeah,
I've finally got the number memorized. That's a silly statement, silly thing to say. Okay, good guys. I'm really happy that crackling appears to not be a problem this week. I'm really happy about that. Okay, so boy. You guys, by the way, let me say this right out of the gate. You guys are probably going to really, I am hoping that you guys are really going to love the podcast this week. This is, I think, according to John's count, this is John Atack and me, our 26th video together. And we did a we did a collaboration for his channel and for mine that's posting tomorrow. And it is a 2-hour discussion of why Scientology auditing is bad for you. And while we all know it's bad for you, and we've talked at length about various mechanisms and techniques and coercive control elements of Scientology auditing, that's what my channel's been, about a lot of. Somebody pointed out that it is hard to go to a single video or a single place and go, here's your reference, here's your list, here's your breakdown of why Scientology auditing is actually bad for you. What is it doing to you? What's actually going on there? What's the real intent of what's going on? And really breaks it down in terms of the anatomy of a session, the framework of the session, the physical layout of the session, right? All of that is stuff we go over in this video because I wanted to finally put something together that is here it is. Watch this and you'll get it, right? And that's what we did. John was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm game. Let's do that. And so we ended up having this very interesting, I thought, I hope you guys do too, discussion about Scientology auditing and whether it's and the great thing about what we did here is pretty much everything we talk about applies to objective auditing, to subjective auditing, to Dianetics auditing, to Scientology auditing, to sec checks, to whatever, any form of Scientology auditing. Pretty much everything we talked about in this podcast fits. So there's no getting out of it with, well, that kind of, yeah, sec checks are bad, but boy, I really loved going clear. Okay, or, oh boy, that OT2 was really eye-opening. Okay, maybe not, right? So anyway, we will be posting that tomorrow, and I hope you guys will check that out. Yeah, Jono, on the tone scale one, that actually is the next video to do. And all I'm doing right now to get that prepped and done is the script's basically done. And I've got a vision of what I want it to look like. And it includes motion graphics. And since I'm using non-Adobe software now, I got a little bit of a learning curve. This is really literally the last bit for me to put this to produce this video. So I've just started learning the animation motion graphics features of the software I'm using so that I can produce that video because I've got some things I want to do with that. It's not just me talking at the camera. There's graphics and animations and stuff that need to be part of it in order to illustrate and show some of the principles with the tone scale and stuff. So I think that'll be fun. Okay. Good. So as far, and on this note, I see here we have a call in the queue right now. Okay. Let us go ahead and pick this up and get right into it. Hello, is this Anthony?
Hey. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you turn me down in the background so it doesn't echo here?
Yeah. How's that? Is that better?
Definitely. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Thanks, Chris. I'm a semi-frequent caller now, I guess. I've enjoyed your work for a while, and I always enjoy my conversations with you when I call in.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to start off by saying that so I live in Irving, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. And
yep.
There's a Scientology building here. It's in Las Colinas. I've driven by it a couple times. It's very nice looking on the outside, but I'm sure, based on your work and other stuff I've looked into, I know that there's bad stuff going on there. And I want to say I've always had this sort of and by the way, I do think this question I have feeds into your point, the theme of the episode about the end of Scientology.
Yeah.
I've always had this sort of I'm a very curious person. I like to explore things that interest me, and walking inside the building has been in the back of my head for a while, but I've resisted that temptation because I know it wouldn't, at the end of the day, it wouldn't be productive. There'd be nothing good to come out of it. But I'm just, it's a drive of mine. It's like I'm really curious, and I thought to myself, based on all the research I've done and based on everything I've seen about what this cult does, I've wondered about if I were to speak to a Scientologist face to face. I understand that there's not much I could say, like whatever I would say, I heard this, I heard that. There'd be a mental block up immediately, right?
Right.
They'd be like, oh, suppressive person, bad stuff. It was designed to be very, very hard to go up to some, nearly impossible to go up to one of them and say, "Hey, I heard this," and then for them to be receptive to it. But I had a thought, and it was based. I had it when I was rewatching Going Clear the other day, about the Xenu stuff. There's tape, there's audio of Hubbard talking about Xenu and the space planes and the volcanoes. Would it be a feasible thing to walk up to an active Scientologist and go, "Hey, I heard this recording. There's this recording I heard of L. Ron Hubbard talking. Have you heard it?" And of course, they wouldn't be like, they wouldn't resist to listening to it because it's a recording of Hubbard. And if you just play that audio of him talking to them, talking about it, what effect would that have on a Scientologist if they heard Hubbard's voice before they knew anything about OT3 describing the story of Xenu?
Well, it probably, to somebody in the Scientology world who's not yet gotten to OT3, the Xenu thing, it's not going to really mean a whole lot to them because there's not a lot of significance connected with that unless they happen to have heard about it otherwise. I mean, in 27 years of Scientology, nobody ever said the word Xenu to me. So if you said it to me, it wouldn't mean anything, right? You need the whole story of that for it to be significant, yeah?
Yeah. But if a Scientologist had heard before, like, there's this thing in OT3 where Hubbard talks about aliens and Xenu and stuff, and they were like, "That sounds crazy, that sounds weird," and then later it was confirmed by audio of Hubbard's voice. To me, that might trigger a little bit of, "Oh, wow, I was told," or because if this person were to ask their superiors in Scientology, they would say, "Oh, that's not true. That's nonsense. That's just fake news."
That's right.
But then you'd hear the recording. So would that maybe have an effect of like, they told me one thing, but here's audio saying another of the guy's voice?
Yeah, no, I hear you. See, here's the thing. That would probably be meaningful to you, but it's so easy to just say, "Well, that's not Hubbard. That's just some fake." I mean, look how easy it is to make a fake these days, right? So it's not even like that's...
So they would just deny it's him?
Absolutely. If you were trying to present it to them as some kind of gotcha, they'd be like, yeah, okay, if you say so, but I don't think that's Hubbard, or I don't even know what's the point here. What point are you trying to make, right? Like, yeah, Hubbard talks about aliens. Well, he talks about aliens in History of Man. He talks about aliens in lots of bulletins. That's not necessarily inflammatory to a Scientologist that they're talking about, past life stuff.
But in videos I've seen with, like in the David Miscavige interview with Ted Koppel brings it up to him, and he just outright denies it. And so does Tommy Davis. Tommy Davis outright denied it. It wasn't like, well, that's, so what if Hubbard talked about aliens? That wasn't the attitude. It was a firm, no, that's not true.
Yeah. But that's Ted Koppel on Nightline. There was a different impression trying to be created there on a nationwide stage to an individual conversation.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Let me throw something at you as a suggestion to this situation or the scenario you're presenting, right? Where you have a chance to talk to a Scientologist and perhaps throw something at them, right? Ask them what they like about Scientology, and they'll tell you.
Okay.
Right? And then say, what do you not like about it?
They'll probably say nothing.
Exactly. At which point you then say, really? Nothing? It's perfect? Really? Huh.
Yeah.
And just leave it there. Don't say,
okay.
Just ... right? It's seed planting.
So like plant a seed?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
We said it simultaneously.
Yeah. If you have a shot, that's the kind of shot you can take that will have an echo effect in their head. That's the kind of thing they'll keep thinking about for a while. You know what I mean?
Because, like, the thing is for me is that it's not super far from my house, the building. It's probably like a 5 to 10 minute drive away from my house. And every time I've driven past there, just on occasion, I've just thought to myself, man, it's like, I want to, it's kind of part of me that wants to help the people inside there, but I realize it's just little old me. There's nothing much I can do with the grand scheme of things, but I've always sort of fantasized or imagined in my head walking in there and having a conversation with a Scientologist and somehow breaking the shell.
Right.
I realize it's probably a fool's errand at the end of the day. And that's why it fed into the end of Scientology thing for you. So,
yeah.
I appreciate
that's
go ahead.
Let me just reinforce, what we were talking about there, because you're on the right track in thinking about, well, what could I say? Because a lot of people get tongue-tied, right? Or they end up saying something really dumb. And that doesn't help. It'll just make the person double down, right? The key to this is to not make the person feel defensive. The second they feel defensive, you kind of lost, because the brain chemistry changes and they go into fight or flight, and it's now it's a fight. Now and that's not a receptive frame of mind. It's the exact opposite of a receptive frame of mind, right? So that's why you want to keep it low key and just plant seeds. Just plant seeds,
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying it may not be a fool's errand to walk in there and plant a little seed someday.
Exactly. If you want to do that, think it through, figure it out, go for it, right? I mean, the worst that can happen is you don't succeed. I mean, it's not a life or death matter. But if you can plant that seed, boom, you're in,
Yeah. The other thing I've been worried about going in there is there's certain malls around here that I'll never walk into, because if I walk by or if I just sort of casually walk into certain stores or walk by certain kiosks, I know from experience that there's people there owners who will just sort of corner me and hound me about buying their shit and just make it very unpleasant. And I'm kind of worried that a similar thing will happen if I go in there. They'll be like, why don't you check this out? Why don't you do this? And it'll get really, I hate being pestered. I hate being browbeaten. And I feel like that might be an issue if I go inside there.
They might do that. Little hard to say these days. It's a little, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about tonight, is why that is, because it's a little chaotic in Scientology world right now. And so I really can't accurately predict anymore what's going to happen when you walk in there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, that's good to know. All right. Well, it's a little project of mine that I will continue to think about, and I just wanted to get an expert's opinion. And thank you for what you do, man. I'll go ahead and let you go now.
Awesome, man. Thanks for calling in. Bye-bye.
Of course.
All right. And I see another call coming in here on the screener, but let's... Okay, Jono, I will tell you very quickly, since you're asking me this question here about me and that uniform thing, because I can tell you real fast. The video of me that is on the internet of me in uniform is totally authorized, totally fine. I don't have a problem with it. It's video that was taken by Anonymous in Seattle. When I got off the RPF, I was sent out, and I was sent to Bridge Publications, and I worked there. But then while I was at Bridge, I went out and started doing Sea Org recruitment. And Seattle was one of the first places I went. So you're seeing me less than a year off the RPF there, in my full uniform, what was called a Class A uniform, showing up on this recruitment mission to Seattle org. And the woman who's with me is another Sea Org member, who was just a friend of mine at the time, but we were on this mission together. And so we were showing up to the Seattle org for the first time there that day. And there was an anonymous protest out there, and they got footage of me. And then after I got out years later, that footage showed up. I don't know. I don't remember how. Angry Gay Pope found it somewhere. So, okay. Okay, I don't know, Robert. I don't know about Joy Villa and the Tampa org website. But I want to get to a couple points here that we were talking about, because we got a lot of people watching, I can see here, more than usual. Welcome to the Friday night show, everybody who's a first-timer here or coming back around. I did not keep any of my Sea Org stuff. No, I've only got a clear bracelet. That's what I still have, is my original clear bracelet. It's a Scientology symbol, silver bracelet, and it's in a drawer here somewhere. Okay, so let's talk about the end of Scientology. This is a topic that I have been very avoidant of for years, you know, because this is a thing that we critics get into, or people who get real hopeful and really anxious and really excited. You know, this is it. This is the end. Scientology's going down. You know, this court case is going to take them down. This scandal is going to take them down. You know, Dave Miscavige.
It's this time.
Yeah, exactly. Dave Miscavige's going to jail for sure now, right? It's going to be the end, right? And I'm telling you, even if Dave Miscavige goes to jail, that's not necessarily the end of Scientology. It's an international organization with a lot of buildings, a lot of money, a lot of resources, and a lot of people involved. I mean, it's still not a huge organization. It's a tiny organization. It's a, you know, maybe 35,000 people max, right? Especially now, as we're going to go over, they have been bleeding people like crazy, and I am a little excited about it, excited enough about it that I thought, let's do a show and talk about this. And just, you know, this is conjectural. This is me thinking about the situation based on data, including new data that I am receiving from contacts that I have who are feeding me fascinating information. You know, oh, and by the way, I want to thank the super chats. Thank you very much, Oz.
Thank you, Oz.
That is awesome. Very appreciated. And who was that earlier? That also.
Oh, it was
yes, R.R. Smith, as usual.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very appreciative of those super chats, guys. Really appreciate the support. Okay, so that kind of, you know, little disclaimer or whatever being thrown out there that this is conjectural. I am amazed right now. I mean, I am sitting here absolutely blown away at how badly Miscavige is bungling things right now. I mean, really surprised. And this guy just kind of, Miscavige's incompetence is kind of the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, he just keeps screwing up and screwing up and screwing up. And for a long time, I kept thinking, no, there's probably some other master plan, or there's some other strategy, or some other way of thinking he's got going on, or he's, you know, this, or he's that, and there must be some other plan. And I don't think that anymore. I think this ship is just completely going off the rails, right? Going over the edge. And the reason I think that is because COVID has knocked these people for a loop. But there were actually some things happening when you start putting all the data together. And if you read Tony's blog, there's a lot of information from you know, lots of sources there that over the last few years as to what's been happening in the Scientology world. And we know about certain things that have happened or have gone down. And I've got multiple sources on almost every one of these points. So it's not just, you know, some guy, you know, or some girl called me and gave me the rundown, and now I'm, you know, this has actually been months and actually literally a couple years in the making. We have a situation with Scientology where they committed gross, blatant criminal financial violations with credit cards and credit unions and financial shenanigans in order to get people Scientology auditing. Funny enough, this is history repeating itself, because back in the 1970s, in the late 70s, I was in Southern California growing up in Scientology, and my parents were involved with the Mission Network. And if you all remember the missions and how big and prosperous they were back in the late 70s before Hubbard and Miscavige destroyed them, they were the big prosperous delivery units of Scientology. People were coming in droves through those missions, and they were becoming true blue Scientologists. People were really dedicated. It was a real high time of Scientology until Hubbard and Miscavige destroyed it. So during that time, little minutia for you, is in Southern California, as part of that mission network, they set up their own credit union. In-house. A Scientology-based credit union for Scientologists.
How did they...
Yeah.
Was it not FDIC backed or something?
No, it was very irregular and very no-no and very naughty.
Okay.
And I don't know all the ins and outs of it. Okay, I can't speak in detail about it except to say that I was like 10 years old at the time. And I can remember those days, and that was a thing. And it was called SCS, Scientology Coordinated Services, was the sort of master group running the missions in Southern California under Carl Barney. He was this big mission holder. He's now declared. And he set up a credit union. And they were loaning Scientologists money, new people coming up, to buy Auditing. And they were arranging loans, right? If this Scientologist had money and this one wanted to get some Auditing, he could borrow it from this guy. And, you know, they had all this stuff. So you had these loans going on, interpersonal loans between Scientologists, which the Regs, the salespeople, were setting up and arranging. And this is big no-no, right? Arranging loans was a great big no-no when I got in. So the reason I'm talking about this history in the 70s is because history repeats itself now, or at least a couple years ago. This was a great big problem, a great big deal that took over Scientology internationally, because it came out of this practice of what they did more recently is they figured out ways to bump up people's credit limits or get them credit cards like Chase or not VA, what was it? Navy credit union, like military credit unions. And they figured out how to game those to get people lots of credit very quickly. And then bang those cards up. I mean, too much. Way too much for these people to deal with in terms of the financial burden that they were incurring. But they were also excited about the fact that the LA organization, this all started there. And this was about a year or two pre-COVID. So if I have my dates right, there might be some slushiness there, but it was within this, a couple years of before COVID started. This became this big craze in the world of Scientology, is this big credit thing. Started at LA Org. Somebody there figured it out. Kind of kept it a little low key for a while, but LA Org this was when LA Org was converted into a Sea Org organization. So it's all just got Sea Org members. And so it was Sea Org members who figured out how to do this and implemented this. And the big, huge, huge mistake they made is they exported it. Is LA Org was taking off. They were making money hand over fist with this credit card fraudulent thing. They were lying on the credit applications. They were applying for military stuff, apparently, that with non-military. I mean, it was crazy, right? So they were illegal things going on. And there's details of all of this on Tony's blog. If you want to Google, check that out. The mistake was LA Org it was converted to Sea Org, but it's also known within the Scientology world as the Continental Org. And what that means is it's not just a regular Class 5 Church of Scientology that can take you up to clear. It's kind of responsible for all the orgs in the West US. And so they were bringing executive staff members from the other orgs to LA Org. And this was going on even back when I was in the Sea Org. This kind of thing was happening. These apprenticeships and executive type, that's what they called them, as apprenticeships, because they really didn't have any other term for it. So here they are in LA, Sea Org members, banging people's credit cards, making money hand over fist, blowing the stats away. Miscavige doesn't actually realize what's going on. He sees these stats blowing up, and he thinks it's because of his brilliance with implementing these new policies and stuff. Well, it had nothing to do with him or his orders or policies. It had to do with the fact that they were engaging in credit card fraud. So he goes down so they're pulling all these staff in to train them and apprentice them. Well, what do when they go back to their orgs? The same thing. They learn how to do this and they go, well, we can do this. And so, these ideal orgs, they start committing all these credit card frauds and other problems and financial shenanigans. So Miscavige comes down for an inspection one fine day. Again, this is pre-COVID. And sees this happen right in front of his eyes. The reg just does it, right? As the salesperson is, I just want to watch you do. And, you can imagine how nervous the salesperson was. Miscavige is standing right there, But they do their procedure thinking they're doing exactly the thing they're supposed to be doing that's been booming the statistics that everybody's happy about, that LA org is booming and it's just, clover everywhere. And Miscavige looks at this and goes, what the fuck? Right? He had no idea. And he's like, what? Now, Miscavige ain't a great guy, but Miscavige recognizes criminal activity when he sees it. And this is exactly the kind of thing that is a direct threat to Scientology's tax exemption. If the IRS finds out they are committing credit card fraud to the tune of millions of dollars, are you kidding me? Right? They'll shut him down overnight. There's no way. So Miscavige is willing to do all kinds of crazy stuff, but, I'll do anything for stats, but I won't do that, right? So he, so apparently, like that night or the next day, there's a briefing. All the staff come. Miscavige gives this briefing, and that, from the podium, removes every single Sea Org salesperson, registrar, from their post around the world. Right there, right? They're all off post. Like overnight, there were no Sea Org regs. And they had to replace them all immediately with other people who it was made most clear to them that they better not be banging anybody's credit cards, right? That they better not be doing this chase wave is what they called it, right? The chase wave. And anyway, so that is where we get that. Now we have a couple calls in the queue, so I'm going to take a little break from this briefing and pick these up. Hello, you are on.
Yes, there's this lady has a website called A Corporate Casket, and she did a story about group homes. And apparently, she mentioned something about Scientology is weaseling away some of these group homes, kiddie group homes.
Interesting. Not surprising. And where's that? Up in Washington?
No, it's all over. These corporately ran group homes. They're no different than a Burger King or McDonald's.
Interesting. I wonder if they got in there with a through the Wise business consultation line or something. I wonder how they got in there.
Yeah, it seems like Scientology seems to be the thousand-armed octopus. Seems like they have their tentacles into everything.
That is true. They are pretty big on getting their tentacles into things.
Yes, they are.
All right. Well, thanks for telling me about that, Mark. That's interesting. I'll have to see if I can find some more news on that.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, man.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool. And we have another call in the queue here. Hello, Diane.
Hey, Chris and Melissa. How are you guys?
I'm doing all right.
Glad to hear your voice.
Good. Yeah. So, okay. I would say the key word of the last 2 years of organizations and businesses has been adaptability.
Yep.
So I am wondering if you think a lot of the downfall of Scientology has to do with their inability to change and adapt to what has been going on the last 2 years.
Yes and no. And by that, I mean that I would have given a resounding yes. up until a couple years ago, because Miscavige has made such massive changes, as I'm going to go over in the show here, that I almost don't recognize Scientology anymore. So it has changed, but you're absolutely right that it's not adapting to the kind of things it needs. It's not changing what it should be changing. It's changing all the wrong things. But the adaptability.
It does seem like
Mhm.
I'm sorry. It does seem like he's playing both sides of the fence too.
Yes. And how do you see that?
Because doesn't he put forward to his what is it called? Public, like it's all clean, like don't worry, it's fine, it's COVID, it's just a bunch of nonsense, and then he's treating his Sea Org members like, oh my God, you have a cough, I have to keep you,
Yes.
Quarantined.
Yes.
It's weird.
It is weird. It's very weird. And I can't explain all the motivation behind that, but that's exactly the kind of thing that is contributing directly right now, I think, to Scientology going right down the drain. Absolutely.
Well, yay, Scientology going down the drain.
Exactly. I thought it was good news. So that's why I'm a little excited to share it,
All right. Well, you guys have a good night. I'll keep listening.
Awesome. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
All right. Cool. And just because we are... Okay, let's take this one real fast. Hello. Is this Nicholas?
Hey, how you doing? How you guys doing?
Yeah.
What you got?
So, basically, I had a question as far as the child trafficking and all that stuff. That's those cases that are going on with Scientology.
Yep.
It seems to me that the big issue is the courts keep letting Scientology arbitrate that on their own, which is confusing to me because, number one, you would think that the court looking at those contracts, because it says here, like, for example, in this article, it says, even though the Baxters were compelled to sign a series of documents, etc., I mean, they're always signing documents, right? That's Scientology's way of kind of, keeping themselves free from, actually having to deal with the actual court system, rather than just messing around with arbitration. And it's like, hopefully some more celebrities are going to start speaking out against it to give these, to give the little people, a little bit more of a spotlight to hopefully shine the light on what Scientology is doing. But how do you get rid of that arbitration issue? Because if the courts aren't going to openly call bullshit on those, billion-year contracts or whatever, I mean, on its face, one of those contracts is obviously fraudulent. And regardless of being signed, it should be a fraudulent. It should be considered a fraudulent document. So I'm not really sure why it's not.
Okay, and the reason for that is because the case needs to be made to the court, not to the court of public opinion, but the actual court of law, that it was a fraudulently signed document. And that has a burden of proof. There has to be evidence provided that shows that, and that's a necessary part of the filings of the lawsuits and whatnot, is that, hey, yeah, there's contracts here, but, they shouldn't have been signed or something. And then you have to start showing intent, and it gets real complicated when you have to start proving this stuff. You can.
If they were underage.
What's that?
If they were underage and signing a contract, I mean, like one of Valeska Perez, who I hope you were able to get on, he signed the billion-year contract at age 6. I mean, just by basic fundamental law, you can't be considered competent at that age to know what you're signing.
No, of course not. But nobody thinks about, just to be clear, nobody's thinking about the billion-year contract as a legal contract. That's just a symbolic gesture.
Okay.
There are legally binding contracts, though, in Scientology that every Sea Org member and staff and public are made to sign. And Though, and if a public or a staff or a Sea Org member, is presented with a piece of paper and puts their name down on it and they don't bother to read it, that legally is on them. It's not Scientology's fault that they signed that document according to the law. Not according to me, according to the law, right? So you have to go in there ready to show that if you're going to make the case that it's a fraudulent thing, you can show that. And that's a little hard to show sometimes. The beautiful thing about this new lawsuit in Florida is that, they were kids when they were trafficked. That's not cool. And even more important is there's another lawsuit happening where the arbitration thing was kicked out. I think this was in California because they were trying to enforce this arbitration contract thing on somebody who was no longer saying they were no longer a member of the church. So it didn't really make a lot of sense that they would have to go to religious arbitration with a group that they're no longer part of. That's not their religion anymore, you know? We're hoping that will be the precedent that will carry forward so that no more of these arbitrations have to happen. But that has to still be proven out.
I would also think that it would be a violation of international law, not just American laws, given the fact that they were taken, according to this article, I haven't been able to read the whole thing, but apparently, they were all over the place as far as, being taken by Sea Org or the Free Winds or whatever those little boats are named. It's so fucking irritating, pardon my language.
Tell me about it.
It's like, it's so obvious this is against the law, law against the laws of God and man, so to speak. But it's like, why do they keep getting away with it? It's ridiculous. It feels like the law is not taking this situation seriously.
Well, I'll tell you what I suggest you do, and I totally hear you. Believe me, I have sat in this chair being just as frustrated. And I have done interviews with two different lawyers, Phil Lord and Cyprian Ivanov, about these issues because I'm not a legal expert and they are. So both of them have explained in various ways what's required and where the cases have kind of fallen down and where they've done good. And if you want to check those podcasts out, I think that might help clarify some of the frustration but at the end of the day, I understand it's frustrating,
Yeah, and then even then, you still got the issue of, well, even if Miscavige gets punished or even some of these, upper level, you've got all these other little Scientologists waiting in the wings to take over. So it's just
exactly
that's going to be its own little situation. So
that's right.
I guess at the end of the day, all we can do is focus on, as you said earlier in your show, ask those questions, plant those seeds in the average Scientologist, and then hopefully within, the next decade, they'll go down to friggin', 5,000 and just eventually close up shop.
Exactly. I see an end more like that than I do some spectacular nuclear explosion, right? I mean, it would have to be like insane for the Masterson case to end Scientology. But for it to be, a nice nail in the coffin, absolutely, it would certainly contribute to the motion. But there's no one thing that's going to take out Scientology, except perhaps David Miscavige, and I got a few more things to talk about with that. So,
well, and I would think that he's 62. I mean, I hate to say this about anybody, but maybe he's starting to suffer some neurological problems.
He drinks enough whiskey, apparently.
Yeah, well, and the problem is, I'm sure there's people waiting in the wings who are perfectly willing to, slit his throat, so to speak, and take power, given that it's, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, I'll let you guys go, and you have a wonderful week. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks for calling in. Bye-bye. All right, cool. So we've got one more call, and this is Travis, and I'm going to take this call, and then I'm going to finish my point. All right. So, Travis, you are on.
Hey, Chris.
Hey,
Hello,
welcome to the
Melissa.
show.
Hello.
Thanks for taking my call. I have a few questions about the material you presented earlier about the financial fraud in Scientology.
Yeah, let me do my best to answer them.
Good. So how widespread was these machinations on Scientology's part with the credit card fraud specifically in the, I guess you had mentioned fake mortgages or loans?
Loans, yeah. You have a couple different things happening, but as I understand it, this was minimally national for United States, perhaps international, but definitely national. I know for sure East U.S. and West U.S. were engaged in this kind of activity. I don't know for sure about international.
Were there, so this was widespread at the bottom.
Yeah.
Did you intentionally, this was widespread. Was this something that was Miscavige knew of, or was it simply something that spread along the bottom to buttress the statistics and, the Miscavige just blindly went along with it?
The way that the information came to me, it seemed clear that Miscavige did not know that this was happening. And when he found out, his response was immediate and nuclear.
Explain that, please.
The taking all the Regs off post overnight. That's unprecedented. That's never happened in Scientology. That's a big deal, right? For him to do that. That's indicative to me of the fact that he did not know what was going on.
All right, so
but realize that's its own level of awful, that he didn't even know it was going on. I mean, it's either way, he's kind of fucked on that one. You know what I mean?
Why do you say that? Because it shows, or at least it gives the appearance of there being some type of organized fraud at the institutional level?
Well, there is lots of evidence of organized fraud at the organizational level and has been for decades. But this is a level of fraud that is so blatant and obvious that it surprises me it took that long for him to catch on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks for calling in, Travis.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. That was faster than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So let's finish my bullet points here because I got a few more things to go over, and we're gonna go over probably a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Well, I'm gonna do my best to. I know.
I don't know what to do with you.
I know. All right. So here we go. So the whole fraud thing was a great big problem, and that alone would have been scandalous, if it had been made public in any organization, right? That would have been awful. But then COVID happens. And interestingly, COVID was almost a relief because things were about to, things bombed. With this happen, when this stopped, everything crashed, right? Because all the ways that they were using to bring people in, reg them, and then get auditing happening, because this is what it was all about, was selling services. So they were selling auditing, and then people were getting auditing. Suddenly that all dried up. Right. And so, everything was kind of turning up goose eggs and zeros and right. And stats were crashing, and they were kind of crashing everywhere because remember, he took all the salespeople off their jobs. It was greenie weenies overnight, right? People who had no idea what they were doing. So then this was the way the timing works on this is I think this was just a few months before COVID hits, right? March, what was it, 2020?
Yeah, that's when it started getting real bad.
Yeah. So I guess it was end of 2019 when this Regis thing happened. I'd have to look up the exact dates, put a timeline together. But then COVID hits, and we've gone over, COVID was a bloody nightmare for Scientology, and it still is. To this day, there are still problems with this. They go insane with their protocols, right? They had videos put together for Scientologists that drove Scientologists mad. I mean, absolutely, like they were fit to be tied. They were so upset over these protocols, and these protocols and all this stuff. This was coming from Miscavige apparently, and he did briefings, and he talked about this. He definitely knew about this part, and he demanded, not just a mask, but you had to wear gloves, and not just in the org. Through your whole life, every time a Scientologist left their home, they were expected to wear a mask and gloves.
Damn.
Yeah, this was some of this was on Tony's blog. These little manuals and stuff, but they had videos. They were expected to, when they went grocery shopping, to carry this Decon 7 cleaner around with them
stuff.
and spray their food before they took it off the shelf. I mean, crazy levels of expectations of control of Scientologists' personal lives during their every waking moment. And this was beyond the pale for a lot of public Scientologists. There are a lot of really pissed off Scientologists right now because of this. And by pissed off, I mean telling the staff when they were calling them, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not coming into the org. And when you guys get your shit together and this is all over, maybe I'll come back. This kind of stuff. I mean, really pissed off people. So this is going on. And apparently now they had a 2-week quarantine on the bases, on the Sea Org bases. That apparently ended after they got everybody vaccinated, but they can't tell anybody that they're vaccinated. Apparently, a whole bunch of the Sea Org didn't even want to get vaccinated because they're all into the conspiracy theories that I've gone on and on and on about, that you guys know so much about, right? They are full on into that QAnon conspiracy headspace, even going so far as QAnon, which is really bottom of the barrel when it comes to conspiracy theories. So these kind of draconian measures and the constant cleaning with the Decon 7 creating actual sickness. But get this, the policy that comes down, the directives that come down say, well, with all the Decon 7 and all the cleaning and all the protocols being followed, no one should be getting sick. So if you get sick, you're getting a COMEV. Oh, no, you're getting a committee of evidence. The highest justice factor you can, action you can get in Scientology short of getting declared. This is a very serious thing. It's like basically taking you to court in Scientology, right? And if you get a sniffle, you're getting a COMEV because that proves you're not following the protocols, see? And here's the wild thing about that for any of you guys who are familiar with Scientology is there's a whole body of L. Ron Hubbard writings about this thing called being PTS, or a potential trouble source. Talked about it at length on the channel, right? Got a lot of videos about it. If you're PTS, that's how you get sick. Hubbard is crystal clear that any accident, illness, injury is a PTS condition. And you're supposed to get DPTS'd. But all of that got thrown out the window with this directive that if you got a sniffle or anything, it's because you didn't follow the protocols. It has nothing to do with PTSness. And this is where it started hitting me, that this is what's making this and what's going on right now. And there's more, a lot more. But these things are what's making Scientology into something that is not even Scientology anymore. Whatever Miscavige is doing to change this thing, it's almost unrecognizable now. Because not only do you have all these draconian COVID protocols, which are still in place, they still are expected to mask up and glove up and do all this crazy stuff. But did you know that to this day, all of the red and green volumes, as they're called, the policies and the technical bulletins of Scientology don't exist in the orgs. They've all been shredded. They don't have policies written by L. Ron Hubbard and bulletins written by L. Ron Hubbard to refer to in the churches. I don't know what the hell they're doing. I guess they have course packs that have specific issues for specific things, but otherwise that's all they got. So the whole idea of in Scientology, one of the most foundational principles that they use to reinforce Hubbard is, if it isn't written, it isn't true. Right? If it's written, read it. There's a whole checklist of things that, is this valid? Is this something I should be doing as a Scientologist? Well, the first thing is, if it isn't written, it isn't true. And yet they don't have access to any of Hubbard's stuff except what Miscavige has been issuing. A little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. And that's it. They got a bunch of staff now down in Clearwater, Florida, training on this new OEC, this new administrative training program that's going to create the best executives ever. But all the policies they're studying at Flag, they don't have them back at the orgs. And they haven't for, I think it's been about, I don't know, 8, 9 years? I mean, I think this was happening when I was still in. But it wasn't finalized till after I got out. Because when I left Scientology, when I left the Twin Cities org, we still had red volumes and green volumes in the building. And if you've been in Scientology, you'll understand like the magnitude of this. It would be like removing all the Bibles out of a church. Like any Christian church. Like if you just went in and just took all the Bibles out and said, we're just going to listen to the minister now. And no, you can't read Genesis. No, you can't look up Revelation. No, as a matter of fact, I'm not going to let you look up, the Epistle of St. Paul or whatever. No, you don't get to do that. You're gonna watch this video. You're just gonna watch this briefing from Miscavige. That's what you're gonna do, right? It's that kind of magnitude, and it's a big deal because it's actually like foundational to what creates that Scientology mindset. Is L. Ron Hubbard's writings. And if the staff and the public can't refer to them and read them and use them and enforce them and all of that, it changes the entire character and nature of Scientology into something a lot more wishy-washy and loosey-goosey and arbitrary. And that is just, that's a downhill move, for an organization that is as structured as Scientology is around L. Ron Hubbard's writings and his lectures. And so this is a big, big, big sea change for them that this has been part of this picture. It's to the point now where I was told that there's this cause resurgence rundown in Florida that you can go do. It's the running around the light pole. Literally, you're in a dark, the whole top floor of that great big monstrosity building that they created in Clearwater, the superpower building, it dominates the Clearwater skyline. The top floor is a great big circular space with a light pole, a lighted pole, and it's dark. Right? You got little running lights, like little tiny lights around the wall, so you kind of see where the wall is. But the cause resurgence rundown used to be called the running program. And you just run around the light pole. And here's the thing that blew me away about it is I've heard from 2 different people now who have done it. And you don't have any written references on it. There is no L. Ron Hubbard in it. There's a picture book. Here's your picture book. And when you go in and say, okay, could I see the bulletin that L. Ron Hubbard wrote that describes this thing? No, you can't. It's confidential. Wait a minute. All you're going to give me is this picture book? Yeah. So nothing from L. Ron Hubbard here. Nope. Unrecognizable. That's just not, I just don't even know what that is. But it sure as hell isn't Scientology. I can tell you that. Then, right now, apparently, and this I would still need to verify, but yeah, I'm gonna keep going until I'm done, Lori. Don't worry. Right now, apparently, the orgs have opened back up. Oh yeah, the orgs have opened back up. I can't believe I'm saying that because the full import of what the orgs did during COVID didn't really hit me until just the other day. They closed. If you knew how many hours, how many days of absolute nightmare scenarios I lived through because we wouldn't let orgs close. When I was in management, we had orgs threatening to close all the time because they couldn't pay their rent or their mortgage payments, and they were on default. They were on the verge of being shut down. And we in management at Continental level had to deal with that. We had to pay their rent out of our pay sometimes. I mean, we didn't get paid for weeks because we had to bail out Valley Org, or we had to bail out, you know, Hawaii Org or Albuquerque Org or one of these cheap ass orgs who doesn't make any money. So we had to pay for them, subsidize them, and keep them going. And of course, when we did that, we would generally tend to get a little mad at them and or send projects down there to make money and that kind of thing. But the point is that it was a mantra. We were told over and over again by our commanding officers, orgs don't close. And it is L. Ron Hubbard policy. Orgs never close. So what the hell, right? Miscavige ordered all these orgs to close. They were shut down for 2 years. I mean, they're just opening back up very recently. And apparently in the class 5 orgs at the local level church, at the city level churches, they can't deliver purification rundowns or this thing called the survival rundown, which is the objectives, the objective co-audits. This is a big deal because these are the two mainline services that almost every org has basically been living on for years. And they can't deliver them because of COVID, because there are apparently phases to opening back up. And they have to comply with this program of, you know, in order to do this phase, you have to submit all this evidence and then get approved. And then you can go to the next phase. And nobody can get approved. Nobody can show that they're all good and everything's going to be safe. It's not exactly clear why Miscavige is going on such a tear on this. And it's not, and this might not necessarily be universal. But we do know that that Los Angeles and New York and some other, you know, possibly some other places are stuck right now. They're just not. They're open, but they can't really do much of anything, and that's wild because that means that the biggest the biggest barrier to delivering Scientology in the last 2.5 years has been David Miscavige directly, like personally responsible for shutting it down. I never, ever, ever imagined I would see the day where something like that would happen, where this group of things would come together, you know, the COVID protocols, the tech and policy not even existing in the orgs, the fact that there's rundowns being delivered that have no Hubbard behind them, and people are paying thousands of dollars for this and doing these things and just accepting it and just rolling with it. And then no Pura for Scientology drug rundown. And finally, one of the other things that's really, really, really created a schism right now in Scientology is this vaccine thing, because when I talk about conspiracy theories in Scientology, I don't know if I try really hard to get across. It's a big thing in Scientology. Most Scientologists are on some level of spectrum of belief on conspiracy theories. Very few don't subscribe to them in any way. So the anti-vax thing and the whole QAnon thing and all of that is big in the Scientology world. Bigger than I knew. I had to get told about this.
QAnon was so big. I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew the anti-vax thing was, but
they tend to go hand in hand in a lot of ways, especially when you feed in Hubbard's brand of conspiracy, because he was all about the 12 guys who run the world, and it's all a big worldwide, international level conspiracy. Real Alex Jones, you know, David Icke kind of lizard people kind of stuff, right? It's not, he doesn't talk about lizard people, but that kind of grand conspiracy theory is what I call them. And that's the kind of thing that Scientologists are all in on. So, so the whole vax, COVID protocols, all of that created huge problems in the Scientology world and real schisms. And so I don't know, reopening the orgs, it's not like all these Scientologists are just flooding back in. And the stats apparently suck. And Miscavige's briefing, which he gave, they had their very first event, and the audio of some of it is on Tony Ortega's blog. I wrote a response. Some other exes that you guys know wrote our responses to this audio clip. But Miscavige is going on a tear about how expansive Scientology is and how the orgs are opened up again and the COVID protocols and da-da-da. And we've got 36x expansion of new people coming in and stuff. And it's jumping the shark. His briefing apparently internally, this is what I'm being told, he's actually going too far for even Scientologists to accept. He's just telling whoppers that they just can't even deal with, right? Like, what? The org's been closed for the last 2 years. What are you talking about? 36 times expand? Where? You know, how that it's just too much. So even for people who are in this incredibly invested, focused bubble worldview, it's shattering because of what Miscavige is doing. And I'm just telling you, Miscavige is an interesting character, and there's a lot of things we've said about him and a lot of things other people have said about him. But I really thought he had a better head on his shoulders. Like, I am blown away right now at the incompetence here. It just is the sheer number of systemic mistakes. I mean, these are huge problems. Because here's the thing. You might think, in listening to me right now, that, well, he's going off of Hubbard and he's creating his own thing. And what's the problem with that? No, the problem is Miscavige ain't source. Miscavige didn't write any of the books. He didn't do any of the lectures. And he's not the guy who's responsible for what goes on in an auditing session. He's not the one who tells auditors how to audit, right? Hubbard does that. And if you go off of the reservation too far, too fast, which is what Miscavige, I think, is doing, you upset people because they're there for Hubbard first and Miscavige second, even now. So you can only push that envelope so far, right? Before it kind of, push that rubber band too far before it breaks. Thank you, Preacher 1138. No, it would lead to more free zone, I think. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so these are just signs and indications right now, okay? But they are really big ones. And so I feel a little more confident today than I ever have in looking at this and going, Jesus, he might be imploding this thing himself. And I just thought he was smarter than that. And I thought he was going to drag this out, and I thought he was going to let this thing go as the cash cow that it kind of is for him. And, that was kind of my vision of where he was taking things. And as long as he could keep the legal front under control, then things could keep rolling. And he had an operation that was just kind of going, even if it wasn't huge. Doesn't have to be huge for him to have his needs met, including his needs to beat on people and terrorize them and abuse them. He's got plenty of fodder for that, but he's messing up all over the place with this. I mean, he's just like, it's just cracks everywhere. And then, what was that last thing I was going to say is, well, it's just kind of unrecognizable now. I mean, I know if I went into a Scientology org now, I wouldn't even recognize what the hell they're doing. I mean, it's so kind of wildly different. Oh yeah, I was talking about the Hubbard and Miscavige thing. So Miscavige can't go too far off, and if he's pissing everybody off, and he is apparently, with these COVID protocols and these other demands and stuff, he's, it's just gonna implode. And And I've just never been as hopeful about that as I am today as we do this show. And that's what I wanted to share with you guys today, were these points, you know, kind of all put together. You get one, you get another, as we've been getting over the last couple of years, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's really screwed. Oh, that's messed up. You know, but you put it all together and you're like, holy cow, this is unsustainable. Because you can't, you know, oh, this was the point I was going to make. Yes, Miscavige has been changing things, and yes, Scientologists have been going along with it. But if you start changing the very framework on which this whole thing is built, you really are cutting off your need. I mean, you're cutting yourself off there, because Scientology is only a destructive, abusive cult that gets people in because it can do certain things, because it says certain things in a certain sequence. Hubbard worked it all out, and it was a kind of a workable way to fool an awful lot of people. Not everybody, not by a long shot, but enough people that they kept coming in. Mm-hmm. And if you change all that, and Miscavige is no Hubbard, he's just not that creative of a guy, and he's really not that smart when it comes to, you know, building sustainable frameworks, let's put it that way, sustainable organizations, right? Then he's gonna, you know, he's really kind of shooting the golden goose is kind of where I'm going with that, right? Is he's kind of strangling it himself. And if he kills it, then it's dead, and there's no more golden eggs, you know? And then it's gonna be living off of reserves until there are no more reserves, and that's it, you know? Oh, are we having a struggle here?
Yeah, they're struggling about COVID.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. So regardless of the COVID, whatever, this is the scene with Scientology right now. And so I've got reason to be excited by that. I thought you guys might too, and you might want to hear about this. Apparently some of you did. So I think this is more than we've ever had on a live stream before for this one. So cool, folks. I'm really glad you're here, and I hope that y'all can come along and join us on other Fridays as well. We're going to start wrapping up now, because we usually keep this to an hour. We're really good about that. And you know, what about OT 9 and 10? I mean, that's not going to be much of a saving thing at this point, but it's actually not even in the works. There is no 9 and 10. Miscavige is going to have to invent them. And even if he does, even if he did it tomorrow, it would actually be too little too late, because all OT 9 and 10 really kind of only appeals to the OT 8s. Everybody else still has to get on the OT levels and get up them. And remember, there's really only about 5% of Scientologists who make it that far. So the vast majority of Scientologists are still at the lower levels. So OT 9 and 10 are not an immediate, oh, I can't wait, right? It's really only the OT 8s. And how many active OT 8 Scientologists are there these days? You know, beyond the ones who've committed suicide or left, you know, or in prison or committed crimes. And there's more than a couple of those. You know, that's not really going to be a saving thing for him. Okay. Yeah. Go check out that video with me in it. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and wrap it up now. Yeah. There's just, it's bad. It's bad. There are even other things, but I've covered all the main points. So with that, we do need to do our traditional critical thinking cards. Can't leave the show without that. So my wife is drawing a card from our critical thinking deck of logical fallacies and cognitive biases, because we always like to educate on this show. So what do we got tonight?
We have ad hominem. Attacking your opponent's character or personal traits in an attempt to undermine their argument. After Sally presents an eloquent and compelling case for a more equitable taxation system, Sam asks the audience whether we should believe anything from a woman who isn't married and probably eats her own boogers.
Wow. That's some ad hominem, all right. All right. Thank you very much for that. And guys, check out the podcast tomorrow, and my critical Q&A is already shot as well, so that will go up on Sunday. And we'll see you next Friday.
Night.
Bye-bye.